I've been wondering if I should, wear my glasses throughout my reviews. But for now, I'm not gonna wear them. I'm just gonna let my eyes rot away. And we're gonna review a very, very well-known and at times considered as, one of the greatest, if not greatest, horror film of all time. It's French, so I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Let's call it Diabolique for this one review. Now, Le Diabolique is a French horror film made by one of the greatest French directors of all time, Clouzot, and it's one of the greatest horror films ever made according to everybody. Even the mainstream media usually calls this film as one of the greatest horror films ever made, and it's also with suspense thriller, so it's also one of the greatest suspense thrillers ever made. That's a hard word to say. And you might want to see the film if you just listen to the plot. So there's these two women. They both used to be with this guy. This one woman is actually with this guy at this moment, and she's thinking about a divorce because the guy's kind of an asshole. And these two women, having a bad history with the man, both of them, decide to kill him. So they kill him, and they try to hide the body, but the body disappears. That's the plot of the film. When you listen to that plot, you might feel that this feels like a very Hitchcockian plot. And this is a true fact. Hitchcock actually made Psycho, one of the greatest horror films ever made, once again. He made Psycho to try and beat Le Diabolique. Like, that's the reason why he made Psycho. He wanted to make a better horror film. That's how good this film is. And having seen it, it's definitely really, really good. Like, I'm so tired of saying that this film is really, really good, because I usually praise most films I review on here, but I try to watch classics, and it just so happens this is just another great horror classic. Um, as the film starts, you get the tone very much so right away. The settings are very gothic. The settings could easily be used as horror settings. Very short stairways, very long hallways. There's a dark, dirty pool right in the middle of the yard of this big school that both of these women work at, and the guy in question who they're trying to murder is the headmaster of the place. And you can see it right away that the headmaster isn't a villain. Like, he's just an asshole. In fact, if anything, the film tries to portray these two women as the monsters of the film. That's a very interesting way to look at it. Because most films these days, and I'm not going to try to say, I'm going to try to say this in the least controversial way possible, most people, most of the time, recently in recent cinema, women are trying to be empowered very much so most of the time, and that's a great thing. I love the fact that women are being empowered in recent cinema, but in this film, women obviously have more power here, but they're considered as monsters because what they're doing is not moral. That's a very interesting way to look at these characters' actions. And the fact that the headmaster isn't this totally terrible person kind of emphasizes it. He's a bad guy. He's not a total, demon. He's not the devil. He's not the devil reincarnated. He's just a terrible person. And it's also shown in the way the film depicts sex. Like, there's this one scene where the headmaster gets closer to the woman he's married with, and when he gets to the woman, they're hidden behind this one part of the wall, and you just hear screams. Like, sex is depicted in such a horrifying and taboo way. It's a very interesting way to look at sex as well. And then the murder happens, and the way the murder happens is very slowly done. It's built up very well, and when it happens, you're also at the edge of your seat. You don't want people to get caught, even though you know they should get caught. And you're just kind of in a mixed place, because you know that this guy isn't a terrible person. He doesn't, murder should not be his punishment, but he's getting it. And you're just kind of in awe of the whole situation at that point. Then the body disappears, and that's when the film becomes so much more interesting than the first third, because now the conflict is not with the headmaster. That was an obvious conflict. The conflict is now between the two women. They start accusing each other. They start calling each other names. They start talking about who should go to jail instead of themselves. They start talking about who's the real villain here, who's the real demon here in this situation. It becomes so much more interesting when you see these two people who try to have one common goal become such contradictory characters. One becomes more fragile about this situation. One becomes more stern. It's such a great contrast. The film also just uses every single setting effectively as they could. They use the hallways effectively. They use the pool so effectively. Like, they throw the body in the pool and the body disappears within the pool, but the pool becomes such a center of suspense. Like, there's this one scene where a kid jumps into the pool to get some keys that one of the women dropped into the pool, and you're just waiting for him to find the body, and he doesn't find the body, but it's such a suspenseful moment. So the conflicts become more interesting. The settings are used more effectively. But what happens at the end of the film basically is some of the best filmmaking ever. Now, before that, in the middle of the film, it's very much so emphasized that everybody's kind of, all human beings are very self-absorbed. Everybody's very self-oriented. Everybody, to a certain extent, have a diabolical part of them within them. It just never comes out all the time. And these two women are the supposedly diabolical people in this situation. And at the end of the film, it also, basically, at the end of the film is trying to say everybody's diabolical. It's not just these two women. It's not just the man. It's not just the headmaster who died. Everybody, to a certain extent, are absolutely diabolical people, and we should not be doing these things. And the last third of this film is some of the best filmmaking I have ever seen in a horror movie. It's some of the scariest scenes you will ever see. Like, they do everything. They basically do everything. There's a deceptive shot in the beginning of in the last third of the film. You see a hand, and for a moment, you think of somebody throughout the film. You think of, like, it's gonna be that person, but it's not that person. It's another person. Like, they keep tricking you. They keep bringing you into this really fragile place, but they bring you back to the safe light. Again, they keep doing that to make you very shaky. And then comes the absolutely horrifying part. Now, this woman starts to think something. Like, she starts thinking of a ghost within her mind, and she walks out of the hallway because she thinks she sees somebody. And the dark hallways, the slim lights, this dark stranger we can't see, spooky typed writing on the typewriter with empty gloves on the keys. It's some of the scariest things you will ever see in any horror film, and throughout that scene, there is no music. It's pure silence, except you hear doors creaking. That is some scary shit. And when the twist happens, and because there's a twist, when the twist happens, not only does it emphasize the message of the film, the fact that everybody's diabolical, not only does it make total sense as well, but when it happens, the second the twist happens is one of the most horrifying imagery you will ever see in the film. I'm not going to talk about that scene. You might have already seen it before this film, but it's one of the most scariest things I have ever seen in any horror movie. It is Le Diabolique is one of the greatest horror films / suspense thrillers I have ever seen. Easily a 4 out of 4. I'm not calling it a masterpiece yet because it's not an emotionally involving film. It's more of a really effective horror / thriller. But for what it is, it's amazing. It's one of the greatest films of its genre. So it's easily a 4 out of 4, and I can easily see myself coming back to this film. Eventually, this film becoming a masterpiece. So yeah, Le Diabolique, 4 out of 4. Bye.